Many years and crazy ideas later, including going to Hawaii, still would have loved to see that. But we have the sequel to one of the films I really enjoyed when I was younger, in Beetlejuice Beetlejuice. As it is a new release, and there's parts of the world that still haven't got it yet, but I don't think I've got audience there. But I always like to play it safe and do non-spoilery, just general thoughts, and then go into detail afterwards. I've had to restart this because there's some things I've said that I'm like, oh, that might be spoilery. So, fingers crossed, this is a release version of my review. So this was directed by Tim Burton and written by Alfred Gough and Miles Millar, who developed the story with Seth Grahame-Smith. And of course, the characters were created by Michael McDowell and Larry Wilson. We have returning stars, of course, in Michael Keaton, Winona Ryder, Catherine O'Hara, but we also have newcomers in the sense of this in Jenna Ortega, Justin Theroux, Willem Dafoe, and Monica Bellucci. I really did enjoy, like I said, Beetlejuice. I've done a video of it. It's one of those things that I really do appreciate. And the sort of messaging behind it is kind of there, and the fact that Beetlejuice is just unapologetically inappropriate. I know during the creation of this, that is something that they said they wanted to maintain. There's a lot of stuff now with legacy sequels where it's cleaned up and made more modern sensibility friendly. But this is a bioexorcist. He doesn't care about the living. He doesn't care about political correctness. So, it's one of those. Keep him as it is, and that works mostly for it. It does feel like, he is a throwback to an earlier time, but technically he is anyway. In the first film, he says he lived through the Black Plague and things like that. So that gives us an idea. Of course, he's not the most reliable narrator, so at the time of that, we didn't know if that was true or not. But still, if you take him at his word, yes, he's been around a lot. He's not going to be super on the pulse of what's acceptable, and even if he was, he wouldn't care. But with Winona Ryder coming back, with Catherine O'Hara coming back, that was beautiful to see as well, because they're an important part of it. That mother-daughter relationship was a core part of their friction, which kind of got softened and eased throughout the film. But then we can reflect that with Jenna Ortega's character coming in of Astrid. Her relationship with Lydia is weirdly similar, because there's a universal thing. As teenagers, even if you're in a household that, gives you all the freedoms and everything, you'll rebel against that. You will seek more structure and order instead. So I do like that mirroring, or that sort of replication of that relationship. But it still stands on its own. There are some things that perhaps I didn't really enjoy. I felt that Justin Theroux's character of Rory was effectively, well, we can't have Glenn Shadix because sadly he's no longer with us, but we want an Otho-style character. And I just don't think it was necessary. The whole purpose for him to be in there is like a comic relief and to be a bit of an annoying person who's trying too hard, etc. And there is a moment later, where all is revealed about what he really thinks, but I really think that we didn't need it. This character who gets his comeuppance, who thinks he's all that, we had it in Otho, we didn't need it here. We didn't need that replicated. There's a lot here that I do love, though. I am more of a Tim Burton fan than Amy. Like she said, it's very much more my thing. She enjoyed it, just as a fun romp. She'd probably give it like maybe a 7 out of 10. I, with my, appreciation of what came before, and even with some of the things I've said that I didn't feel were great, I can't give it a 9, but I didn't think 8 was enough. And I know I don't normally do ratings, but maybe I will moving forward. I keep doing this now. But I'd give it an 8.5. I can't settle on either number either side, so 8.5 is ideal for me. Because, like I say, the stuff that isn't great, but it was fun. It's not something that I've had to watch 10, 20 films before and 5 TV series to understand what's going on. You could literally come in not having seen the first one, potentially. But I think it's served if you do have that pre-existing awareness and understanding of the characters. We watched it literally 2 days between, so we had it very fresh, and that's where some of the references and callbacks were nicely done. Now, before I go into the spoiler thing, I also do have to talk about the fact that there is one returning character, but not the actor. I feel we have to broach that, because Jeffrey Jones was obviously Charles in the first one, and his character returns here in a form, but not acted or voiced or anything by him because of things that he's done with minors, let's just put it that way. And I wasn't sure how they were going to do it, because he is an important character in the first one. It's not like he's a side character, he's part of that core family that moves in and torments the Maitlands. I mean, he's probably the least bad in that situation, like the character. But Obviously, he can't be in this. We can't support that, in the industry, etc., especially within the last few years. But I do respect how they handled it. I think they gave the character the nod, but like I say, not tying it so much. Obviously, they do have to use his image a few times, but they did what they could to make the best of both sides of it. So yeah, the back of the box, quick blurb. I did enjoy this. If you've seen the first one, you'll probably enjoy it more. If you're massively into Tim Burton, you'll definitely enjoy it more than that as well. But I think it's still fun for anyone who just wants a film that they can just go and see and not be too bothered about. So now into the more spoilery things, and there's one thing that was consistently in some of those earlier takes that I did that I mentioned, and that was just casting. I mean, there's one that's less, but I'd have probably forgotten that I shouldn't talk about the character more. But the big one is Danny DeVito. His name does not appear in the titles. It only appears at the end when we've already seen him. And I saw it somewhere, actually. Someone made the connection. Like, he's drinking bleach. He's not very tolerant towards foreigners, like that French guy who comes in, etc. It could be Frank Reynolds. Frank Reynolds could have had a mishap, and this is now his job. But also Santiago Cabrera. I was like, the guy playing Astrid's dad, Richard, he looks familiar, but I'm used to seeing him, one, without a bunch of makeup and fish stuck to him, but also generally with a beard. So I was a bit like, is it Santiago Cabrera? Is it the guy from Picard? And yes, it is. So I was very happy with that. But both of those are, really interesting characters because, I mean, okay, we could argue that Frank would probably end up doing himself in, let's be honest. But Richard didn't. And yet he's working for the afterlife. And we're told in the first one that civil servants are the people who ended themselves. But there is a scene when, obviously, Beetlejuice is looking through the paper, and it does seem to say something about this. There's like a bureaucratic error, which, from what we've seen of the afterlife, is not entirely unbelievable, let's be honest. Where maybe some people are being classed as self-termination when they shouldn't be, so they're being forced into this civil servitude, but that's not the role they should have had. And even Beetlejuice himself, if he was formerly working with Juno, he would have been, therefore, a civil servant. But that flashback scene that we see, which is weirdly in Italian and black and white, which really gave me a moment of like, has something gone wrong? And I'm like, no, this is a bit, it's fine. But that whole scene shows that, yes, like he said in the first one, he lived through the Black Death and he enjoyed it because he was a grave robber, but he drank poison that he didn't necessarily know was poison. His reaction when he realizes is not one of like, okay, I'm happy with it, but he consciously held the drink and drank it. So again, this leads into the idea of like this clerical error that keeps happening. People keep being put into that job when they shouldn't, and that's possibly why he then went on to be a freelance bioexorcist, because he's like, this isn't the job I should have. I didn't do it myself. Now we know this. And yeah, it's hindsight. That was probably never the intent. But it's the fact that now Goff and Miller have looked back and gone, okay, maybe we can pad this out. Maybe we can add to this. But of course, part of that scene is Dolores. And I think the big one for her is her reconstitution scene, because there's a massive spoiler in that I wanted to talk about again. When she's, everything's coming together, wonderful music, all that, and there's just the left ring finger missing, which then is under the dress and attaches itself. But we'd watched it 2 days apart. We'd watched the first one and then gone like 2 days after to this. And I was like, that's the finger. When he pulls it out at the original wedding, if you will, it's like, oh, she meant nothing to me, throws the finger away, keeps the ring, etc., for that wedding to Lydia. And yeah, it's that finger. And that's why it was, crawling there. I mean, it probably found its way, once it was cast aside, it found its way to that lost and found room and just waited for the day that she'd be put back together. Again, not the intent at the time, I'm sure. It was just a little throwaway joke. Literally a throwaway joke. But the fact that they expanded on it, and yeah, there's so much about this film that was done very well. But I will end on something I talk about a lot, and that is the feeling of, oh, I predicted this. I knew this was coming. And the big reveal that Arthur Conti's character of Jeremy is a ghost wasn't that big of a reveal. I mean, even Amy, I've said, like, she was less enthused about it. She enjoyed the film, but she didn't spot it as early as I did. Even from when she crashed through the fence and he was like, he's up in the thing and he's just, oh, you're right down there and don't worry about the fence. My parents won't notice. the bells in my brain just went, hold on. We could, because in the first film, you know, they're tied to the house because that's their geographical and temporal constraint. But the handbook for the recently deceased does say those differ from ghost to ghost. So, as we learn later, he fell out of that treehouse, so that's fine. That's where he died. I can totally understand him. But it's close to the house, so we can give him that and the house. His parents dying in the house at his hands, they're probably stuck inside, so they're not going to go outside. They're probably not even going to look out the window because they don't want to be reminded that they can't go outside. So, yeah, they're not going to notice, are they? That's what my thought process started. And then when she's in his room and, you know, he's kind of like, I even noticed slightly outdated fashion. That was one of the things. I mean, I know there was the James Dean line, but even before then, there were little things that I was just ticking the box like, this sounds like it. And as soon as the book was shown, I like to believe that people are pretty savvy. And anyone who's seen the first one, as soon as they saw the book, was like, I do not buy that this was in a yard sale. I do not think. And we know that the living can take them, but it just seemed a bit too like, why would you make a big thing of this if he isn't one? And then when we don't see his parents' faces, I'm like, there is something here. And I've said before, sometimes those are disappointing moments. I'm like, oh, I figured out the twist. But with this, I was like, that was really well done. It was subtly played. Like those early beats that I picked up, like I say, Amy didn't necessarily pick it up as quickly. But I still didn't feel cheated. I was like, yep. I was like, yes, I get it. So this film, again, I did really enjoy for what it's worth. And now I'm glad I've been able to expand on why. Like some of these, you know, expansions of stuff in the first one and just how they've handled everything. I would have liked it perhaps sooner, you know, when we were first talking about it. But I'm glad we've got this. I know Tim said there's not really a chance of another one. Like, if we go on the amount of time between, it'll be like 100. It's not going to happen. So this is the end of the Beetlejuice story, I guess. And I'm fine with that. We have an ending that I'm happy about. I can leave this world alone now. So thank you very much. Actually, no. There is one more thing. Don't worry, I'm not about to burst into song or anything like that. But that's what I want to talk about, the bursting into song. I'd totally forgotten about it with everything else. But I absolutely love the song MacArthur Park. I think the Donna Summer version's okay, but the Richard Harris version, which was the focal piece for that scene, they used the Donna Summer for the beginning and ending, but the Richard Harris version was so wonderful, and the choreography, what they did with the scene, the very literal icing running down and all this kind of stuff, I'm like, I am happy for this. This is joy right now. I was probably just sat there beaming much more than at any other point in the film throughout the whole scene, just watching it. The absolute absurdity. And that is a good thing to end on. So yes, thank you very much for letting me talk about this at far too much length, probably. Next couple of weeks, I'm going to have fun with some stuff, I think, and then we're going to be into October, and I've got a plan the whole month of that, which is good, because I'm starting uni again, and I need some stuff in the bank to give me that time to reacclimate to education. So until next time, as always, take care.